Can we pre-approve this, Brian, before you put it up?
So anyway, I'm sure we'll cover a lot of things that'll probably irritate people, and some guys will agree with. Because anytime you talk about this, there's like these far opposing sides of the fence, and there's some middle of the road. So
I just can't buy into the whole face paint thing. That's so
like special ops. You put it on, you just feel.
But then you got to wash your face.
And then when it came to the shot, it's like, oh my God,
Autopilot.
there's the shot. Autopilot, save me, right? Bung, and off the arrow would go.
And I answered him, but I'm asking you that
I want to hear
question.
your answer. No, I want to hear your answer.
This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We are at Aron's humble abode here in Golden, Colorado, coming at you live, sort of. I've got some strawberry serenity here, so I'm feeling very serene.
I just drank my ginger ale, but it was in the fridge half drank, and it may have been spit in before. It did not taste great, so now, and I am chewing, so if anybody messages me that I was chewing, I know already.
Yeah, and I've got Moose here next to me.
The mascot.
Moose, our mascot, he's a little mini dog. I don't know what he is.
He's a teacup Yorkie. He's scared of everything. He will lick you to death after
except
cardio.
me. I mean, look at that. He ran right in, curled up next to Brian because he's an animal. I'm the beast master.
Moose. Come here, Moose. No, it ain't happening. He only likes me after cardio, and he'll lick the flesh right off me. He likes the salt. He'll lay there and lick my head, my arm, up and down.
I always love coming over here and stealing Aaron's kombucha out of the fridge.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about antelope hunting today and shooting bows and stuff. A little bit of that because, Aaron, you just got back from Colorado antelope hunt.
I put Wyoming on Instagram so everybody knows now I was lying. But, yeah, it was Colorado.
It looked like Wyoming, but it was
didn't.
not because you drove there in the morning and you shot it on the same day and came back that night.
Yep, I was with. I'm supposed to leave his name out of it. And initially I said Yukon Cornelius. He did not like that name, so he's going to be the BG or the Big Ginger.
The Big Ginger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool guy, like super cool. Like, it's hard, when you meet someone you immediately click with and they're that funny, especially with my personality that some people don't like.
Right.
It's like, okay, what are we going to need to do to go on another hunt together just so I can laugh that hard? Because it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But the hunt, it was funny because I shot that thing pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, he's like, all I could think about was, man, we only got to hang out for like 15 minutes. But it turned into, we got to hang out quite a bit longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't go as smoothly as I'd hoped.
So let's talk about this.
Well,
Lessons learned, experience. Was it cool?
yeah, I probably didn't learn any lessons because I'd still take that shot again. But we basically spotted several antelope, and this one's horns kind of swooped forward, and he was with a buddy. We circled around the backside of a hill, and we found his buddy bedded down, but his buddy was smaller, and the BG was with me, and this buck came in, and it didn't catch us moving. We were on our knees when it saw us, and I was behind my bow, and I was kind of doing like this, and it was catching his curiosity, and it just kept coming and coming, and once it got into where I had to stack pins a little bit.
So people are listening. So what does that mean? Like when you did this, you did this.
Oh, yeah. I bob with antelope. I've shot a lot of antelope spot and stock, and I've noticed if they don't see the silhouette of the body and you're on your knees, I'll put my bow in front of me. I'll bob my head left and right a little bit, and then stop. Seems to get their curiosity, kill the antelope. Not always, because they seem to hang up out there around 120 yards. But he would come in a little bit, and he'd blow. They go, nah. It's kind of a weird noise.
Yeah.
And then he would come closer. He was very curious, and this was opening day, so they hadn't been hunted. You fling a few arrows at them. They're probably not going to do that.
Right.
This one hadn't been shot at yet, so he ended up coming in to a range I felt comfortable with, and I shot, and when I shot, it looked like I'd pinwheeled him. He did 2 full circles, making this horrendous death noise, piled up, and we bumped fists, which was not the right thing to do, and the hunting guide just stuck it in and broke it off right there. That antelope got up and ran a mile. I mean, it ran a long ways. And so BG was like, man, maybe we shouldn't have fist bumped. And we were talking how much it was bleeding. I put a kill zone in at the first shot, and I'm shooting 84 pounds with a 580 grain arrow. It blew a hole in it, and it blew through its butt cheek, basically. And with a kill zone, I think that's it, 2.5 inch cutting diameter, 1 3/4 inches. Anyway, it left a big hole, so it was bleeding good. And I was surprised I didn't hit the femoral. How I missed it, I don't know. And it would have piled up in seconds. And when it was doing circles from where it was bleeding, I thought, well, maybe that's just where I hit it. And when it piled up, and when I say it ran a mile, it trotted and fell and was not happy. And we were still talking like, oh, it'll go down. And then it didn't go down. So immediately with that kind of a hit, I like to put another arrow in them quickly. And even not quickly, even if you got to, wait for, just keep getting arrows in them.
Once they're wounded.
Yeah, on a muscle hit. So I'm a firm believer in a one long.
But you didn't know. You told me you didn't know it was a muscle hit yet.
No. We knew fairly quickly.
Yeah. Got the glass on it.
Glass on them, yeah. And for me, and BG agreed. Like for me, a one lung or a muscle hit, I try to run them down. I try to weaken them enough to where I get another arrow in them. Stomach, let them sit. We were pretty dang sure it wasn't a stomach hit, and so it ended up bedding down in a very, very killable spot. And I started to make the approach, and this freaking little antelope. I mean, the other thing that happened too, in the midst of all this, a buck immediately took his does, the one I shot, and dude, it hammered that thing.
He chased down your buck and he saw weakness.
T-boned it first, and then it just chased it off, that's one of the reasons it ran so far. And then when it finally bedded, another buck, a little buck, just started nudging it, moving it. And so I couldn't get down and get a stock on this thing just 'cause now it's moving. It's got 4 eyes instead of 2. Thing's got 8 or 10 power vision anyway. So when it had finally... The other buck had finally moved, and this has taken a while now. I mean, it's been a couple hours or an hour and a half. It's on this big plateau that drops in this creek bed, and we go back in the truck and we watch it, and it's not doing very well. And it trips up a few times, but it ends up walking up this hill, and we're talking about how long should we wait? What should we do? And I'm like, let's just keep following it. I'm like, it looks weak. Let's not let it rejuvenate. Let's keep pushing it because you can see forever. So we went up this hill and we're glassing, binoculars in hand, glass and looking. And we ended up passing it. We couldn't see it it was in this.
You walked right by it. You were saying that.
Like 100 yards to the right. So we look back.
And it just let you walk by.
Yeah.
For certain saw you and
was
just kind of holding like a quail.
It probably saw us, I would think, an antelope. But once we passed it, we looked back. It popped its head up, and I put the second arrow in. I just, again, I'm being overly candid. I should probably say I shot it at 40 yards and it died in the first arrow, but it did not. It was like I put the second arrow through at 104. And that was with the iron will, and it zipped through it. I couldn't find the arrow. I don't know where it went. High lung, and it got up and it ran a little bit, and I got closer and I put a gravedigger through it, and that was at 48 or something. And then
it was done.
It was done. Yeah. Like the first shot, what had happened when I had shot, it had taken a step and turned. And one of the things, like, I'm pretty honest with guys, because I want people to, I say learn. I mean, again, we'll get bashed for this, but one of the antelope, I've shot several antelope. The closest one I ever shot was at 48 yards, and it moved so much, it ended up being another bad deal because they're quick. And so the whole take a step thing, they could take a step at 85 or they could take a step at 48. There's no sure thing when you release an arrow, right? And so and I'm not saying farther's better, but generally I'm pretty confident in my shooting, and I felt confident in that shot. It took a step and whirled a little. It is what it is.
Well, that's the argument for taking longer shots, is that it takes more time to get for the arrow to reach its target at 50 as it does it at 80 or 85. How much more time? It varies.
Yeah. And it depends. A guy's shooting 240 out of the bow, and a guy's shooting 300 out of the bow.
It's not unlike though like a traditional setup where a 30-yard shot animal has a lot of time to move on a trad bow.
Yeah.
Because of how slow it's going.
Yeah.
That's why we've both really pushed for a quieter arrow and quieter setup.
Yep.
And at some of these longer distances, these animals they're not jumping the string or hearing the arrow or anything like that. Just
this one just got tired of looking at us and moved. And the one thing, like people, you were asking questions about pin gapping. I've gotten a lot of questions about what I call stacking pins, pin gapping. What's what? What do you mean? What are you talking about? Now, pin stacking, I did it a lot because I only had a 7-pin sight at the Total Archery Challenge, and I was shooting. I think that sheep was bedded at 145. And what I'm doing with 7 pins, I've got 20 through 80. And so let's say it's 140. So as my pins are sitting there, I'm going to look where my 80 is, and I'm going to look where my 70, 60, 50. So I'm counting. I've got 80 roughly, right? Then I've got 90, 100. So my 7th pin is my 80. My 6th pin would be my 90, and I'm looking for a spot to aim. In the case of 140 something, I was putting, I think, my 80 where my 20 was roughly. There's a point of terminal velocity with an arrow, and I've argued with guys about this. There's a point where your arrow reaches a speed. It's not going to go any faster. It's not going to go any slower either. It's at the point. And some people, somebody smarter than me may get on here and say I'm wrong. But, for example, if you aim your bow at 45 degrees, that's as far as it'll go. Any degree more or less, it's going to go. It won't travel as far as it possibly could. A 45-degree angle is as far as that arrow would travel if you're just going to fling arrows into the air.
If you're just going to try to shoot the farthest the bow can shoot. 45 degrees. Gives you the greatest distance.
Yes, and that again, maybe my buddy Matt Fettig, he works for Lockheed Martin. He has more brains in his pinky than I have in my body. Maybe he'll get on here and be like, he frequently tells me when I'm wrong because he's smarter than I am.
But in general, this is kind of what you're describing. It makes sense, yeah.
Right, and there's a certain point of that arrow travels, just like if you jump out of a plane, there's a certain point, terminal velocities, same for everybody.
You reach a certain speed, and that's just your speed.
Now, and some people hit it quicker than others, but it's going to be the same. So there's a certain point of diminishing returns, meaning you're always adding a little for a little bit, meaning your pin gap, it isn't exact science, right? You can get close when you're pin gapping or pin stacking. I did stack pins a little bit for this antelope. Now, the difference between pin stacking, obviously you're stacking pins on top of each other to get a farther distance. Pin gapping is just when it's a 56-yard shot. You're shooting a static set of pins, and you're gapping between 50 and 60, 56. Now you are working on that. You don't like it, basically.
I don't like it. My bow's slower, a little slower than Aron's, and so I'm not shooting real flat. My trajectory's got a good arc on it, and the gap between my 50 and 60 is pretty big.
Yeah, you're shooting 265, right?
Yeah, somewhere in there. And so that gap is a little bit. So when I'm shooting 53 or 56 yards or 57, 55, like anytime I have to use a half yardage kind of where I'm not doing 50 or 40 or 50, or 50 or 60, and I got to pick a 53. I've had to practice that a lot to kind of see where I need to put my pen in order to hit 53.
Yeah.
And the closer, the smaller the gap between my pins, so like 20 to 30.
Yeah, easy.
It's a lot easier for me to find 25.
Yeah.
Right? Or 35 to 40 is even good. When I get above 50 to 60 and I have that gap's pretty big on my sight.
Yeah.
And so it's a much more significant error when I don't have the pin just right, you know?
And when I started shooting pins, I had the same problem. I came up with a system for me, and it's everyone's different. And in my case, now when I shot 3Ds, it was different. I was definitely looking at a 40 and a 50 if it was 44, and I was, gauging the depth or the height. But with hunting, I do it completely different. And I was telling you, I pick a specific pin. So let's say an elk comes in and he's at 46 yards or 44, whatever, somewhere between 44 and 46. So for me, rather than looking at my 40 and 50 and split the difference, I pick the pin and aim low. So in the sense of like, if it's 44, I put my 40 on its heart.
Or your 50 on its heart.
Or my 50, on its heart. And I do that with every distance. Now, some guys would put the 40, and this is where some guys put the 40 on the
high.
spine. Yeah. Now, for me, because for whatever reason, I shoot high. It's probably from punching the trigger, but I'll generally err to the higher side. And so I always aim, and you'll see if you go through animals I've shot broadside, most of them I've shot in the heart. For whatever reason. And I think it's generally because, let's say, my distance between 40 and 50, my arrow drop is probably a foot, let's say, roughly.
Yeah.
So if it's 44 and I put my 40 on the bottom of its heart.
Or 50.
Roughly, or 50. I keep saying it backwards. My 50 on the bottom of its heart. Let's hope I don't miss any animals doing that this year. 50 on the bottom of its heart. I'm, roughly 6 inches. I'm at the top of its heart, give or take, where I'm going to hit. So, for me, a lot of times I'll heart shoot animals, just because of the you're not exactly perfect when you're hammering the trigger. I'll clip the top of the heart a lot. When you get out there between, let's say, 70 and 80, you're roughly, you're going to be a foot a yard, in some 8 inches a yard, give or take, depending upon your bow speed and everything else. And in that case, you really need to fine tune what you're aiming at. So let's say an animal comes in and it's at 82 yards. And let's say at 82, that 2-yard difference is roughly 16 inches, meaning if I put my 80 dead on it, I'm going to shoot 16 inches low. So for me, the armpit is the big one. When I've got a leg and an armpit to aim at, I'm going to gauge off, and it just gives me, and again, this is me mentally, I've got that horizontal line. You could do it on the back if you want to do it in reverse. I've got that horizontal line, but I've also got the vertical line of the leg to judge off of, and it was just quicker target acquisition is all it boils down to for me. And go ahead.
It's similar to what you described with your trad bow. When, like the elk you shot, you came to full draw, and the tip of your bow was pointed at its like hoof.
Yeah, knee or whatever.
It's knee, because you know because of practice that where you need to put that pin height wise,
right, to
hit what you're aiming at. Similar with this, you're saying you're using different parts of the animal then?
Just the armpit. I'd use the same with a compound. Because I've done it for so long, and it's worked well for me. And the other thing too is there's a lot going on with 7 pins, but I've shot 7 pins for so long, it's ingrained in my mind, and I'll count backwards at farther shots. I don't go 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. If it's 86, I go 80, and I start at my bottom pin, and it's all about target acquisition for me.
I'm getting better at that. I'm getting much better at that. I
you
have
are 10 times the shooter you were when I met you.
And I have a 5 pin.
Yeah.
And but I do like the fact that it's a slider, because once I get above 60, I do not like, I don't feel comfortable not being able to dial it to an exact yardage.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and I'm a firm believer in a 4 to 7 pin slider. Mostly because if it's a 4 pin, you've got 20, 30, 40, 50. If it's a 5 pin, which is standard really, or what I would consider standard is 20 through 60. After 60 yards, if you're dialing, more or less likely the animal's not aware that you're there. Now, I've gotten with arguments. I mean, one of the reasons I shot a trad bow was we did that ethical shooting distance, and I got so much hate mail from trad shooters that basically said, you suck as a hunter, pick up a stick bow and try to kill something, learn to hunt. Without getting into that ball of snakes, the thing that I have learned is after 60, they generally don't know you're there. And so, and again, if you don't have the capabilities in the technical side, the shooting side, don't do this. But if an animal's feeding at 70, for me, I'll pick a feeding animal all day long at 70 over a 38-yard animal alerted. Now, people can say, oh, you shouldn't shoot it when you're alert or whatever. I don't want to get into that stuff. But what I do want to get into is the fact when you call a bull in, and let's say he comes in, and you've hunted elk a lot too, they come in charging, and they lock up at 38. They've either seen something they don't like, and most times that I've known, they don't see anything. They haven't seen what they want to see.
Right.
And they're looking around, where's the bull? Where's the cow? And they're alert. They may not be alert of a human, but they're alert like I've come in to kick someone's butt.
Right.
Where's this bull at?
They're all senses are go.
And so when you let that arrow go, he may not know it's a bow. He might think it's a bull getting ready to gouge him.
Right.
He's going to whirl one way or another. He's spinning. He's whirling.
Usually they're like preloading their haunches when they it's a dip and drive.
One of the only bulls I've wounded was a dip and drive because he dipped back to he lunged back, and I ended up catching him and it was close, 25 yards. I hit him in the shoulder. But I mean, you take that and then you take something that's got its mouth full of grass, thinking about ass running around because it's the rut. He's not going to move much. Especially got a quiet bow.
The whole debate on whether an animal is going to move or not move, that's a really, really slippery slope.
Yeah.
And it's something that each archer has to determine on their own, has to evaluate in the heat of the moment based on their experience and their gut and how they feel. Because, I'm looking at people like my wife whose poundage is so low. I mean, like her bow is so slow, that her just not moving that fast.
Right.
And there's a lot that can happen between the time she releases and the time that arrow hits, even at 40 yards.
Yeah.
For her.
It's like a trad bow. I mean, same principle, yeah.
And so, for me, for her, she's got to decide, how do you do that? I watched Corey Jacobson's son take that shot on that bull elk on the linguist. Looks like a poke out there. That thing's running back and forth, and it's pretty amped up. And Isaac knows. He knew exactly when to draw the bow.
Yeah.
He waited a long time. That thing is amped. It's running back and forth. Cows are going everywhere. There's a lot of intensity. He gets the bow back. And the bull's still moving, freaking out, and it's on.
Yeah.
And then he executes an incredible shot and hits it, but that elk could have moved at any second.
Yeah.
Isaac just had to use his gut, his feel, and he's not exactly, what is Isaac's 15?
Yeah.
So he's not pulling poundage like you and I and draw length like you and I. I mean, you can see that arrow. Woo! Well, drop in there.
There's luck involved with his shot, and there's luck involved in any shot. Meaning
you were saying that earlier
both.
today with just off the cuff. You were like, a lot of when it comes down to it, there's a little luck on every single successful shot
because the animal didn't move. And what my thing is I've had animals move so close up, and again, I have the shooting capabilities to take a farther shot that I would prefer 60 to 80. And most people can't fathom that. I get bashed for it, but
I in the past I would have felt similar. I would have looked from the outside looking in, going, but now I shoot 60 to 80. I shoot 100 yards regularly, and accurately, and you're way ahead of me. And watching you shoot at 60 to 80 is ridiculous. I mean, it's as slam dunk as a guy's 20.
Well, and I think where the technology or I don't say haters, but the guys that we're going to lose bow hunting rights because of technology. One, the harvest statistics, unless I think Clay Hayes pulled some shit on me from like 1920 or something. It's changed, but I mean, realistically, last 20, 30 years, the harvest statistics haven't changed a whole lot. The thing is most people, you know, and then they talk wounding animals and, you know, whatever else. But I'm judging this off of me and me alone right now. And that if I'm hurting archery, meaning how I shoot, the distance I shoot, and the level I'm able to shoot, that probably sounds extremely arrogant, but if that's hurting archery, really don't know I'm not going to stop, I guess, is what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to stir up a debate, but I would rather ethically kill one at 70, feeding, than I would the chance of one moving at 38. Now, having said that, it is a rush having a bull come in. And I've shot a ton of bulls on a frontal between 8 and 20 yards. I mean, I think the closest I ever had, I had one closer than the one last year, but last year's was 12, I think.
Which is another age-old debate, is shooting a frontal. But I think we've kind of discussed this so many times, and I think a lot of the community, especially those that follow Gritty Bowmen and you and me, and you know, from our perspective, it's the ethics is in your ability, and knowing your ability, and not going not going beyond that, right? You know what your ability is, and it's different than so and so over here. Well, and
I mean, BG immediately when I made that shot, he commented, he's guides tons of guys, and he's not going to let the majority of people take that shot. Lander talks about it. Again, I'm not as arrogant as some of this is going to sound. This is just because of the conversation we're having. But I can group at 80 yards with broadheads like most people group at 30.
Dude, I watched you hunt last year, and so with there's like a yin and yang. Everybody gets paid, right? So in some way, I've seen you shoot at those ranges, and it's like, well, no wonder you're not very patient at stalking.
Yeah, I don't have to be.
It's not your thing.
No.
And I was talking to you today about shooting and being able to be accurate at ranges I've never done before. Prior to having you help me become a better archer and tune my gear better and tune my bow and have my arrows dialed, prior to all of that, I couldn't achieve the accuracy that I have now, even if I did shoot a good shot, just because of the technology aspect of it. But I look at it now and I think, you know, when it comes to stalking an animal, in the past I just thought, I'm not very good out beyond 40 yards.
Right.
I'm just not. And so I, from my perspective, out beyond 40 yards, I just can't shoot that accurately. So I just have to get to within 40 yards.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that forever.
Right.
So last year when we were hunting and you were like, man, I had to get to 40 yards from my recurve. I was like, welcome to my world. I've been doing that forever. I've been passing on shots at longer ranges forever because
I was missing it. I missed it 22 at that deer, 17 the first day. Yeah.
And so but now I have this combination. I'm excited for this year because I've been spending my whole archery career or archery life, archery experience getting to, 40 and under for every single shot. And right now, I'm extremely accurate out to, 80 yards without coming outside of a kill zone.
Yeah.
On a deer.
I would say paper plate at 80. Yeah.
And there are times when I shoot that at 100 plus, 104, 105, where I get all my arrows in the paper plate.
Coming from the outside looking in, looking at you last year to where I was happy when you hit the freaking target, to this year, you're not in the middle and you're pissed, right? It's a totally different ball game. Now,
again, I remember we were in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
We were in North Idaho, and I was like shooting at the target, and I'm shooting 40 and under, but I'm just shooting at 40, so I'll be good at 20.
Yeah.
No intention of really trusting myself beyond some of these close-up shots.
Well, dude, that bull you missed in Idaho, the one that ran off, your miss was good. You couldn't range it, but I would have shot at from where I was calling from.
I know.
But, begrudge me, talk shit about, I don't really care, but that elk would have been better than fried chicken because it didn't know I was there. It would have come in, I would have stopped calling, it would have circled out at 68 and stopped broadside, looked around, and I would have shot it.
Yep.
But I say that sometimes I won't.
Sometimes things just don't work out. But we talked about this. To explain, there were other shots I could have taken throughout that experience where, I didn't have the perfect heart shot, but I definitely had a lung shot in the
you'd had to have been spot on, but you had a back
and I would have had to shoot between some trees and just things like that where I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not that accurate. And but now I'm absolutely that accurate.
So, and my thing is someone going to begrudge you now because you've gotten accurate? Are they going to say, "Oh, in talking with the accuracy long distance thing, it's not just your ability; it's also because you have the ability now. But the technical side is what you're learning. In my opinion, you're learning more and more on the technical side. You're learning about tuning, knock tuning, your bow being level, how much that makes a difference. Shooting through trees, it doesn't need to be long distance. If you're shooting through, trees or whatever, and you're off of level, even though the lungs are big and you technically are heading towards the lungs, if you're not if your bow's drifting right or left because your level's off, you'll clip a tree. If your arrow's not tuned, even worse, as it's corkscrewing through the air like a tomahawk, the vein or the arrow is going to catch a branch. Where you see my arrow flight, it's money. I'm not clipping trees going through, and yours is as well. But that's the thing. Like, if someone's going to, and I don't want to turn this into one of these podcasts, but if someone's going to judge someone else because they suck, you should shut up and stop talking. Because if you suck, that doesn't mean everyone else does. That would be like me judging you about you have an insane, for a white dude, insane vertical hot leap, right? Does that mean I should get on there and say you're going to trip, you're going to hurt yourself, or should I just say, man, I'm fat and I'm not worth a shit at that?
You're going to pull a muscle, hurt a knee.
Yeah. Well, it's because you've trained, right? You've earned it. Where a guy that learns how to build strings, tune bows, how to properly, read a spine chart, whatever, he's kind of earned it, all right? I'm not saying he's earned to shoot farther, but he is able to take shots that maybe someone else might not. And go ahead.
I agree. On a podcast, Cameron Haynes did a podcast, I think it was at SHOT Show, but it was with Lee and Tiffany Lukoski, and they talked about practicing at 100 yards all the time. Like, they were talking about why they do those long range yardages, why they practice out that far. And I was telling Aron today when we got done shooting that until I started shooting those distances, I just didn't care or pay attention to the fact that my peep sight didn't line up perfectly with my sight housing.
Yeah.
Like, if it was
close,
if it was close, it was fine.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention to my bubble. If it was left or right, I was like, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Whether it's level or not. Well, at 100 yards, if that's not perfectly lined up, the peep in my sight housing, and if my bubble isn't perfectly level, the difference is huge.
Yeah.
At those greater distances. So shooting out those ranges has really taught me the consistency that I have to perform on every single shot. That at 40 and under, I didn't have to.
Right. It's the same thing with your level. And the way I try to explain to it, where people, it seems to really kick in, being in construction and putting way more Herculite, all glass doors that have to be perfect to swing shut, and even regular doors. When you take a door and it's perfectly square, plumb, true, whatever construction workers, all the lingo.
Yeah.
The moment you rack that door, the door that's going in the hole is square. Well, it should be square. Once you rack that door, you're going to have gaps at different points and rub points.
Right.
Okay, well, when you level that door frame, if you have a 6-inch level and you hold it at the bottom of the door frame and it's out 1/8 of an inch, that doesn't mean in that 8-foot tall door opening it's only out 1/8. You've got to keep flipping that little guy all the way up, and it's out 1/8 and 1/8 and 1/8. So if it's
that's why a 6-foot level.
That's why I use a 6-foot Stabila, right? I'm a Stabila fan, so they're expensive though. But a 6-foot level, if you're within 1/8, you're maybe 3/16 out, and you can jimmy the door, shim out. Now I'm talking construction, shim out the edges. For all you construction workers out there, but it's the same principle. If your level's off in the beginning, so if your level, your third axis, especially up and down hill, if that's off a little bit when you're aiming up, it's all it is going to gain as it goes away towards the target.
Yeah, it's like a train track.
Yeah, it's just drifting
like
away.
if it's slanted slightly,
yeah,
it looks, I mean, it's close to the other track as it splits in the Y. But 100 miles out, they're in different states.
Yep. It's like being off on your compass bearing your azimuth.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. If you're, and I talking about the magnet, if you're only traveling 10 feet and you're off 3 degrees, no one cares. Shoot that, do that for 1,500 meters.
Yeah.
If you're trying to find a lake, a pond, you're not going to be remotely close. Same principle with the arrow. It's drifting away from the 12 ring the moment it leaves the bow, and it's getting farther away when you're
more pronounced the further the target is.
It's further and further. So that's why it's so critical. Now, having said all of that, shooting 100 yards or 80, I don't hardly ever shoot 20 through 40. Mostly because it's a chip shot. Once you shoot like 100 in hunting season or whatever, and then you come to get up there, Moose. Get up there. He's such a good listener. You shoot a 5-spot indoors.
Uh-huh.
What I do with a 5-spot or a Vegas face, once I start shooting like a 5-spot, I hate Vegas faces for whatever reason. Now I'm shooting a circle. You got the 5. You shoot a blueberry on a 5-spot, you've done something wrong. It's pretty dang hard to do. Mm-hmm. But you're shooting at an X, which is like, whatever, a little bigger than a quarter silver dollar. Now I'm wanting to shoot 60 X's, right? I want to shoot 60 arrows and hit the X, 60 times or whatever. So generally on like a 5-spot, if I'm at a 58X, I've done pretty well, meaning, and that's how I concentrate indoors in the winter, is I'm shooting now at an X. Because you can't shoot outdoors when it's 40-mile winds and it's snowing. So you don't want to just start shooting at any dot you can and just flinging arrows. I keep score. I shoot a 5-spot frequently. And what I also do that helps for long-term, I shoot a 5-spot at 40. Mm-hmm. And if you shoot a 5-spot at 40 and you're in like the high 30X count and you're shooting you're not shooting any blueberries.
Yeah.
You're going to be, by the time hunting season starts, even though you haven't been able to shoot long distance, all the mechanics are there. All the muscle memory is there. The concentration is there. And that's what it takes to shoot longer distances.
Aaron and I were shooting today, and I was a little frustrated because I've been crushing it for 3 days, like on the course, super confident. And then today I shot pretty average.
Yeah.
And I was frustrated, and I was telling Aaron I was tired, and I talked to our buddy Greg Poole later today, and I was like, Greg, dude, what happened, man? I mean, I'm so good, and then I wasn't, and he was asking some questions. I was explaining, and we talked about this earlier today, like with the box jump, or the, stuff like that, like dynamic movement. I'm really good at. I can clean and jerk a lot of weight. I can't deadlift a lot of weight.
Yeah.
If it's something where it's a gymnastics or like a bow is a static hold or a plank on the floor.
Yeah.
Or a hollow hold. Look, I'm shaking like right after we start.
Yeah.
But if it's a motion, I'm super strong.
And I'm on the opposite.
Aaron's the opposite. So at full draw, Aron can just static hold things forever.
Yeah. Like plank. Yeah, I plank for like 5 minutes, tell a story the whole time.
I'm just not that way. Yeah. And so I'm really good at speed movements, but not holds. And so when you're holding a bow at full draw, I've learned that I'm definitely that's a static hold.
Yeah.
And so after 3 days of shooting a lot of arrows because we're just getting ready to go to BC here, and I want to be dialed, I probably shot too many. And I was talking to Greg, and I said I want to be able to hold that bow like Aron does and shoot.
Yeah.
And I think there's two things at play, and he said the same thing. Like, one is that genetically that's something you're good at, this kind of hold, but you've also been doing it a long time.
Yeah,
the volume of arrows you've been putting up, you got a lot of muscle strength. So I was like, well, Greg, what should I do when I'm shooting like that? He's like, well, when I'm shooting like crap because my archery muscles are fried.
Yeah.
He's like, a few things that he does. He's like, I go to shooting one arrow.
Yeah.
And then just waiting 5 minutes or whatever, hanging out, and I shoot one arrow at each round, and he's like, I cut back and I try to make sure that one arrow is really good. If I'm doing that and it's not good, I go and I basically blind bail shoot
Yeah.
and just work on executing good form and try to focus on a good release so I can build up those muscles without developing some bad habits in the aiming, you know, deal, because you get a little anxiety when you get back there and you're shaking and you can't hold it. And then you start, like, you're not shooting well. And so then you start introducing errors. And next thing you know,
I just put the bow away. Well, we've talked about it. I just watch you guys shoot and I tell you where you're hitting. But I've shot enough to where
you don't stress out about it. I want to shoot my way through it. And Greg's like, hey, dummy.
Yeah.
You're fried. Your muscles are not gonna heal and recover in the 30 minutes you're shooting.
And
your
I can
bow.
remember before having bad days and trying to shoot my way out of it. It doesn't happen. It never does. So now, of course, it comes with time and shooting a bunch. I just put the bow up. I don't.
And I see you do
anything.
that. We'll shoot a few, and then you're like, and you'll just not shoot anymore.
Yep.
And you don't say a word. You just sit back and
it doesn't
and have fun, and we hang out, and the rest of us keep shooting. And then there are days where you're just flinging them all a lot.
The stress level. Well, the other thing too is,
That takes
84 pounds with a 2-finger back tear, a hinge release. I've got to be pretty dialed to be shooting 80 to 120. Because keep in mind, we're shooting at a Reinhardt 18-1, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to pimp out Reinhardt. They're not a sponsor. I love their targets. We got a new insert the other day, and I've had that one. I opened that thing up. There's like 7 broadheads fell out, field tips, and they're all cut up from other arrows hitting them.
They seem to last for on that Reinhardt. I was saying this to Frank the other day, by the way. They're a small target.
Yeah.
And they introduce anxiety.
Yeah, they can.
Because at 90 yards, it's little.
It causes a scene at Bear Creek. Like, you put that thing at 100 yards, everybody's going to be, like, what's he doing with that little ball out there? But it helps you if you don't let your mind take over.
Yep.
It helps you concentrate. Now, if you psych yourself out, but
it does it both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that it feels really good to be able to whack that thing at 100 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, that's something people ask. I did not shoot a hinge for this hunt because it's an antelope and they move. I shot that.
Trigger.
People were asking me what setup I used or whatever, and I used that new True Ball Execute, which at first, because I'm used to shooting a hinge, I wasn't sure. We shot that second day, and I shot my butt off at the Total Archery Challenge. And then, man, I'm in love with that execute release. Like I told you today, I was like, man, I got to start shooting a back tension a little. I'm going to get target panic because I do punch it, but it's a controlled punch, I guess. But and then that AAE DOA arrow rest, I wasn't 100% certain on that thing because you have to recock it. But I don't know that I'll shoot a different arrow rest now. And this was a good example. There's a few times on that stock on the Antelope, not the first one, where I had to draw back 2 or 3 times where the arrow rest stays up the whole time, which for me, the way that I am, is huge because I don't have to worry about falling off. The last thing in my mind is if the arrow's going to dump off the rest, it's already up.
And it's full containment.
Full containment, yeah. And so that's nice. Now, if I shoot an arrow and miss a 52-inch goat and forget to cock it and shoot it in the hoof, maybe I'm singing a different tune. But at this point, I've shot enough with it, I never forget to cock it.
I'm gonna say I've been using it the whole year, and I haven't. I've never forgot to cock it ever.
Yep. No, it's.
In fact,
I like that release.
I just like it.
Yeah, it's clean. It's simple. Now, I think, and we may get yelled at, I think they're coming out with a new one, a micro adjust, smaller version. It's a little bit more dialed down. But the broadhead, I got asked a lot about that. My arrow setup, I was shooting carnivores. I've got 42 grain brass insert up front with 125 grain point. I shot the Antelope. Shot it 3 times with 3 different broadheads. I shot the Kill Zone, the Iron Will Outfitter, and then I also shot it with a cut on contact or a chisel tip Gravedigger.
So that's a little experience in one hunt with 3 different broadheads. What do you think?
Yeah, they were all accurate. The Kill Zone, and I talked with a guy from Iron Will about this. I said, I probably wouldn't hunt antelope with your broadhead. I just wouldn't. Whether you give them to me for free or I'm paying for them. Because I want to shoot the largest cutting diameter broadhead I have with an antelope. They're fast. They move a lot.
They're not a huge animal.
That's what I told them. I was like, I'm not worried about it as much as it would be a moose or an elk.
A big hole, is easy to achieve on an animal.
And I'm worried about penetration more on a bigger animal than I am with an antelope. I shot the pro. The thing I shot it. I have to ask BG. I think it was 104 yards on my second shot. It might have been 114. It was out there. That thing zipped through both lungs and went another 80, 100. We couldn't find the arrow. I mean, it literally zipped through that thing like it was nothing. So that was good. And then
that was the iron will.
That was the iron will. Yep. And it kept going. And again, we talked about it before. It's a vented blade. It buzzes. He did some sound tests recently. Just curious how much noise was coming from the front or whatever. And then the last one was the cut or the chisel tip gravedigger, and that thing went through and buried into the ground. But
so if you didn't have an option in terms of a mechanical, how do you feel about the iron will?
As far as like if I was just going to hunt with
if you're going to hunt with a fixed blade broadhead, and that you have to by state law. Is that one of your top choices then, or?
Oh yeah, and one of the reasons, and it's being overly candid, the accuracy. I don't like the fact it makes noise. I've told Bill that but all vented broadheads make noise. But I don't like the fact it buzzes. How much it affects the animal, who knows? I mean, time will tell.
Yeah.
Those dirt nap, I couldn't get them to fly. I thought they were horrible broadheads, but we're probably going to get hate mail from that. The DRT or whatever, those things are super loud. I know tons of guys that kill all kinds of animals with those. The thing is the accuracy. I was shooting 100 yards today with that iron will and an 18-1, keeping it in the green dot. Not the little green dot, but the big green dot.
Right.
And I shot, 4 groups like that out of 2 different bows, one with a 2-finger hinge release, one with a trigger. It's dialed, the broadhead. The negative side is expensive. So I didn't find that arrow. So that's $33.333 I'll never have again. I keep saying having said that. But having said that, if that was an elk and it was at, 74 yards and I blew through both lungs with a fixed blade where it's, you have to shoot mechanical, or if you have to shoot a fixed blade, can't shoot a mechanical or not, it's the most accurate fixed blade I've ever seen. The Whack'ems, are very, very accurate. There's several accurate fixed blades. I don't shoot them all. I got to pay for these damn things, so I'm not inherently wealthy. But with that iron will, that would be the big downside, the money on it. But if I had to pick a broadhead, a fixed blade broadhead, and you got a once in a lifetime hunt, the accuracy alone is definitely swaying towards that thing. It is a nice hit, and it's sharp. It's sharpest broadhead. Dude, I shot one in the dirt the other day. It was still sharp. I mean, it's a sharp head. So
it does remind me, like with the cut on contact tip, it looks a lot like the gravedigger.
Yep, on the front. Yep. I mean, it's 3 times as thick, probably, but yeah. But those were 2 big things that that DOA arrow rest and that execute release was nice. That's not a sales pitch. I just like those, and I get a lot of questions about it.
I'll say, I've been shooting 100 yards accurately with both the chisel tip and the cut on contact gravedigger mechanical broadheads.
Yeah.
Like they're just dropping in perfect for me.
Yep.
So I'm pretty excited about that because I feel very confident. I don't know if it's the 4 fletch or what the deal is, but Aron's helped me tune all the arrows in the bow and everything. And dude, it's just unreal how accurate the setup is right now.
Yeah, it's night and day difference from where you were at last year. I mean, we got to cut this pretty quick, but a good example of, compound trad, whatever, what you're in it for. You rewind last year to the 3rd day, I stalked into that buck that I said was probably 220. I mean, I don't know how big it was. It was so big I couldn't judge it, but it was 33, 34 wide. That one I was stuck 55 yards from. With a compound in my hand, I shot it right in the back of the neck, dropped it right there. I mean, I will get bashed for that, and I will accept it. But being totally honest, my ability, it didn't know I was there. It's bedded straight away. I would have shot it right there. Now, is it better to have passed that up with a compound, meaning get closer, risk to blow it away? It's arguable. It's not ethical to shoot it, in the neck shot. I'm being honest. I would have had trouble with my ability not whacking it in the back of the neck with a 220 plus inch mule deer in front of me. Will I get bashed for that? Yes. Now, I don't want anybody else to try that shot unless you have the ability, but it is hard for me to believe people that would say, I'm not going to take that shot.
I don't know, dude. We practiced that shot on Train to Hunt. It's one of the main shots that you take. Is like a 3-foot shot and a 5-foot shot and a 6-foot shot. Like, you're close.
Yeah.
You're right on top of it. And what's interesting for guys who've never done that before on a compound, I think I was using like my 70-yard pin.
It hasn't crossed your line of sight yet. So your sight's up here and your pins are here. The arrow hasn't crossed your line of sight yet. So you're having to raise it. And so it screws people up. I mean, people do it all the time. You got to shoot at 70, 80 yards.
You couldn't miss the 12 ring.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't miss it if you use the right pin at that range.
Yep.
I mean, is it an ethical shot? I mean, gosh, how can you say it's not? The second you release that trigger, the animal had no chance to move. It's deadly lethal at that point. You know you're going to hit that mark.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, if you're passing up on that shot, you got to question about, this is just me, but you got to question, is it more ethical to shoot 40 yards broadside at a whitetail buck?
Yeah.
Gosh dang, I can't really say. And when I practiced those shots and I saw everybody, even people who use slightly the wrong pin, like their 40 yard instead of their 7,
in the 10 ring.
They're still in the 10 ring.
Yeah.
So you're shooting up a spine, it's over, dude.
Well, and the other thing too is, we're just because we're going on an Eastern Plains mule deer hunt this year, it is amazing to me all of the different theories and judgments and everything you have. Far shots, close shots, why you're in it, traditional first compound. And, for me, I'm a lot more freewheeling. I just want people to have fun and don't break the law. After that, I don't really get wrapped up around it. Especially, we have so much issues with anti-hunters right now. And we even get bashed for the strung units. There's some fucking dickhead, which I love to meet in person, that I saw bashing this the other day. I'd beat the shit out of him, and I hope you're listening. That was like, oh, we're going to have another come hold hands cry fest on Gritty Bowmen. Say that to my face, dude. I'll hold your hand. Believe me. I'll tight. But what we're trying to get out is, let's join together. God forbid we all get along. Believe me, the antis get along great. And so, minus, if you want to say, I'll take it, right? You shouldn't have taken that shot. I'll own that. I probably shouldn't have taken that shot. But trying to get along is important in what we're doing. And definitely my thing is teach people how to shoot their bow, teach people how to tune their bow. That's a big part of it, because I will take you today at 70 yards against you last year at 30 all day long, because you've learned so much with tuning the bow and at confidence and broadheads and everything else. Most people, and you see it every day at Bear Creek, it's the goof tube show, right? It's the funny farm out there. There's people just flinging arrows away, and they're going hunting.
Right.
So you take one of those jack wagons that wounds an elk at 20, it's acceptable. It was at 20. But you take a guy that's practiced, I wound one at 60, I'm a bad person. Yeah. Well, that asshole just screwed his broadheads on the day before season.
Well, I think, when it comes down to it, like I said earlier, you've got to have the, you want to take that shot that you are confident you will make. I asked this question on Gritty Bowmen Instagram a while ago. I was like, if you make a shot, regardless of the range, but 8 out of 10 times you're in the kill zone.
Yeah.
When you shoot, is that an ethical shot to take?
Because you did miss 1 or 2, yeah.
1 or 2 never weren't in the kill zone.
Yeah.
But if 8 out of 10 times it's in the kill zone,
yeah.
Do you only settle for shots where you're 10 out of 10? And are you ever 10 out of 10?
Yeah, I was just going to say, how many people running down both legs are 10 out of 10? Not many.
Yeah,
I mean,
and when you're in that heat of the moment. So, but I think the important thing is that we as hunters do have a responsibility to the animal to do the, to try to have a humane and efficient kill.
Yeah,
and it's also important that the image of hunting and what we do and why we do it, and that we do it ethically and humanely, is also something that we portray and promote. So, neither one of us are promoting a shot that isn't a high percentage shot or a lethal shot. It's just that there's a difference in ability, and sometimes it's hard for someone who doesn't have that ability to fathom the fact that someone else does. We were talking about this earlier with Greg Poole. I was like, if I tried to play Michael Jordan one-on-one with basketball, it'd be a joke, you know, and that's it right there. He's a different level than me, and sometimes it's hard for those at a junior level to imagine the capability of someone else.
Yep.
And so there's automatically, especially in the case where you're actually going out and killing an animal.
Yeah.
It's not like you lose a basketball game.
Right.
This is life and death. You're taking some animal's life. You could cause it undue suffering or not based on a choice that you make. And so it's definitely holds a lot of weight. There's a lot of at stake, a lot at stake in this moment. But again, it goes back to, you know, staying within your abilities and doing something you're very confident you can do.
Well, and I think what the wrong thing would have been to do, which we didn't do and we wouldn't, is we passed 15 antelope up while we were trying to kill that one or finish that one off that I could have killed. And would it just leave that other one to die? Now that's wrong.
Well,
right?
that's interesting because I just saw a hunting film today, where an animal was wounded and then it ran off, and then you know, they didn't wait quite long enough, which is a classic Aron Snyder move. And then they bumped it a little bit, and then they waited, and
then you got to wing an arrow at it.
And then they went
yards.
Then they went and they tried to find it again later, and they spent a few hours, 2 or 3 hours, and then they're like, "Dang it, it's gone."
Yeah.
And then they went off and hunted a few more days.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, man, I have a really difficult time with that. I understand, like, we've talked about this before. If I've wounded something and I think it's going to live, I'm kind of like, you know what? I tried, it got away, and, you know, it's probably going to heal up, and it's a lesson learned.
Yeah.
And I'll go hunt again. If it's something that I have, like, gut shot and I know it's got a death sentence on it,
Yeah.
and I just feel like I got to keep looking for it.
Yeah.
I do not like to abandon the search, and I'm tenacious about that. And I've seen you're the same way. Like, when an animal's wounded, dude, you're on it until it's dead, or you've exhausted all opportunity. You're not sitting there going, let's go find another one.
Yeah.
Even when you were presented with bull elk in front of you that were within range,
should have upgraded.
where you could have shot something else.
Yeah.
You didn't do it. You stuck with the one that you weren't sure about, but you knew you hit.
Yeah.
To try to finish off the one that you went for.
Looking back now and knowing that animal was okay, I should have shot that 320.
But you don't know.
I didn't. Yeah.
You don't know.
No.
And but if you did know, like, you're like, dude, I totally hit it in the leg,
yeah.
and it stopped bleeding after 100 yards, and I saw it up on the hill fighting another bull and walking around.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, yeah. Of course you go out and find a different elk.
Well, and that's the antelope. I mean, and BG said the same thing. He's like, it's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's too big of a hole in it for it not to. Maybe it's next week, maybe it's next month of infection, but it's going to die. Well, with it being as wide open as it was, of course, and again, my ability gets a hold of me and I make dumb mistakes because I think, oh, I'll track it and I'll get close and I'll shoot it 100 yards, and that doesn't always work out. But with this, because you can see so far, we had good visibility all the time. And, you know, total honesty, half of it was red. It did not look like an antelope.
Yeah. I saw it. It looked like it was on death's door with shot number 1.
Oh, yeah. Well, and Amy's family, who are all not anti, but they're not hunters.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell they were like, when I was telling the story, at the end, they were fine with it because we got it. But if I would have told that story and said I didn't stick with it, it wouldn't have been okay. Now, these are people that hate hunting. Now, I've talked to them about it. They wouldn't vote against hunting if there was a vote up, but they certainly, of course, they're the biggest hypocrites in the world because they're stuffing a cheeseburger down their face. They certainly don't like hunting. But the difference is I stayed on it, and we brought the antelope home.
I think that matters. I think it matters a lot.
It's big to me.
I mean, it goes back to how we manage that perception. I think much of what I published that Shane Mahoney podcast the other day. One thing that in the midst of all this discussion, what you take shot, what shot you don't take, whether you track the animal, whether you go and keep hunting after you wounded one, all that kind of stuff. I think one thing that hunters in general, all those things are important and should be topics of conversation. But also, in addition to that, the motives for why you do what you do.
Right.
Like Aaron and I talked about that this afternoon. We were shooting, and I was like, when I found out that they banned grizzly bear hunting in BC, or they're gonna ban it, November 30th, I think, or October, or something like that. So for those that don't know, in British Columbia, the people voted, and they voted that, and it was by 90% of the electorate. Of the electorate have voted that they're going to ban grizzly bear hunting. Trophy is grizzly bear hunting. They're banning trophy grizzly bear hunting, which means you can't keep the skull, the hide, or the claws anymore. So you can hunt for meat, though. That's still legal. But basically, you can't keep those parts, those animal parts.
Yeah. Which
so
really starts to F with a guy's brain. Why are you hunting?
Yeah. So we talked about that, and it was funny when I heard that. I was like, that's funny. That doesn't faze Aron Snyder.
And I get criticized so freaking much for leaving the head in the woods. Nobody ever says, like, good job, way to bring all the meat home.
Well,
it's like, hey,
no
you're an
hunter
asshole. You left
does.
the head. What's that?
No, well, a lot of hunters don't, but a lot of non-hunters look at you and go, he's not out there for a set of antlers to hang on his wall, right? So I think you're right, though. You have been ridiculed or made fun of by the hunting community because you leave it there, which is ironic because the non-hunting community actually sees that as more valuable, more noble, more of a true reason for why you do it. But I was sitting there kind of chuckling to myself, going, you know what? That's funny because there's no way like Aaron's going to go out and hunt a grizzly regardless.
Yeah.
And then he's going to leave the head and the skull and the hide and the claws anyway.
Yeah.
And so for you, and you're like, I'm like, wow, this is interesting because it doesn't phase Aron.
Well, and the thing, for my little Kuyu buddy that I hopefully one day I'll get to beat the out of. He said before, it's just because you don't shoot big animals.
Mm.
My mule deer's still up in Canada. Lander's got it. Don't care if I get it, and that's a big mule deer. My black bear skull, I don't even know where that's at. Mm-hmm. That big black bear.
Yeah, no, you're not collecting trophies in that way. And we talked about it earlier, like you do want an experience.
The trophy is the adventure and bringing the meat home. And say what you want. I'm not against trophy rooms. I mean, I think they're cool. But to me, we go on your hunt for elk and we shoot. Let's say we shoot a 350 bull, and then we take that trophy home. That's great. But we're getting the meat out, right? Like there's another special friend I have that somehow managed to bring the sheep head out, but during the storm that almost killed him, left all the meat. Well, what kind of bullshit is that, right? Like, what was more important? If you're physically that bad off, at least bring the meat out and leave the horns. God, no, not here. We can't do that in North America.
I mean, you have to. I told Aaron, I go, but dude, if I paid $28,000 for a grizzly bear hunt, and then I come home with photos and an experience, and not a grizzly bear, part of me kind of goes, that's a lot of money for.
Well, dude, you can get in some serious debates. Did you go because you want your pee-pee to look bigger? Did you want to come back and look at mighty me? I've got this giant grizzly. I don't care if I get I wanted to shoot a grizzly, right? That was the big thing. And as I say that, I have a claw necklace of whatever. It's cool. But I mean, are you going to pay? I mean, 28,000 is a lot, but are you going to pay
18,000?
18 or let's say moose hunting. Like right now, we're me, you, or Patrick is about to take a fantastic 4-day voyage after this hunt to get the meat back.
Right.
One of our poor or two of us are going to have to fly up there, rent a car, and drive back. That's how important the meat is to us. Now, how many people would do that for meat compared to how many people would do that for a trophy? Most people are doing it for the trophy.
Yeah, we talked about that quite a bit. It's like bringing home the antlers isn't the issue. It's bringing home the moose meat.
Yep.
That's the issue. Now, if we're going to do it, I'm like, heck, let's bring the antlers too.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But it's kind of like, it's one of those things where it does start to mess with your mind, and you have to, and you, as a hunter, I think it calls into question what your motives are. I was telling Aaron today, I saw a great film about a mule deer hunt that I really like with a good friend of mine. I love the film. But then at the end, the film kind of focused on the size of the antlers and how many inches it was. And it was all about scoring and trophy. And I'm thinking, from a non-hunter's perspective, watching this, they could care less about that.
And I mean, I'm telling you firsthand, I'm in Denver, Colorado. They're everywhere. Throw a rock, you're hitting an anti-hunter. And I'm friends with a lot of them, and one of the reasons why a lot of them like me is when I say like me, like they respect me, is the photography, 1, 2, the meat. A lot of them are, let's say, not vegan. They're just anti-killing an animal for whatever screwed up way the world is. But when they understand or see how I am, where they come to the house and there's some photos on the wall, but there's no dead animals, it gives a different perspective. I'm not saying one's right or wrong in the sense of in the hunting community.
Right.
But in the anti-hunting community or the mid-road, which is very important, do you want them to say, this guy only hunts for the horns? Or do you want them, or look at it that way? Or do you want them to say, well, hell, I can't even tell this guy's a hunter? I'm not saying you need to go out and hunt to sway people, but this is coming from a redneck from Oregon that likes killing, right?
Yeah.
But the perspective of how it's looked at, whatever my roots are, and we talked about this earlier, it may sound bad if you talk to me, but my motive or my goal is a great experience, having fun with friends, and bringing home the meat. That's the big one. And
I've heard a few other friends of mine, guides that are both friends of ours, they'll use the term collector, and then they'll use the term hunter to describe two individuals who both like to go hunt or like to go out. And a collector will go out, and if he can't bring home a grizzly bear, hide, skull, claws, he's not going.
Yeah.
Where I think a real hunter is like, I'm going because I want the experience. Yeah. Not because I want those possessions. And you start to really figure out who you really are.
Yeah. Or who you are as a hunter anyway, yeah.
And a person, I mean, what are your motives? And I'm not saying, I mean, like, we all have things that we value as far as mementos and stuff. And I think, for me, one of the things I really love is like my bear rugs at home. Yeah. I just think they're beautiful. Yeah. I love to just see them. It gives me pleasure to have, that kind of, it's like, why does someone want to log home with stone rocks and kind of this earthy feel? Why do you want fur laying on your couch? Like, there's a certain amount that's just primal, I think, in our DNA. Like, we're animals too. We love this kind of stuff to surround us, and so I don't have any issue with that. But if at the end of the day, you really start to find out, are you a collector or are you a hunter?
One of somebody else I watch on Instagram frequently that makes me laugh, and he did a spiel about inches don't matter to me, and landowner tags take away from it. Go hunt sucks. Eastman sucks. Hunting fool takes away the fun of it. I don't care about the score. I find that comical, considering he asked me 30 times in the first 20 seconds what his elk scored. It's important to people, no matter how much you deny it, the score, the size. I mean, even in the military, the more big penises coming up, the more power you got, right? I mean, that's just how we've, as Americans anyway, I mean, how it is. And I can understand it. Like, the big mighty hunter, the big animals, it's fine. But the perspective of a non-hunting community is probably not a great one.
Right.
And not to...
well, and this whole thing with the BC ban is all around they want to shut down trophy hunting. Right. And especially that's the argument that they used. How cool would it be if hunters still went and hunted and just abandoned the bear hides? What message would that send?
Well, I'm looking at it right now. I'm going to get a grizzly hunt cheaper.
That's kind of what we were talking about today. Yeah. We're like, let's get a grizzly hunt out. I mean, because you're not competing with Mr. Collector anymore.
No. I mean, the Grizzly, all those Canadians are screwed now for Grizzlies. And I mean, it is important. And one of the guys, Chris Rowe, who does a podcast with a guy that doesn't seem to like us very much, but Chris Rowe talks about it all the time that, Jay Scott, it drives him crazy when people have all these points and they draw this one tag and they shoot a 330 bull. Drives him crazy. Okay, let's take a step back. It drives him crazy because it's taking away the potential of what that 330 bull could be later.
In that unit.
Unit.
Yeah.
What it could turn into. That 3.5-year-old 330 bull drives him crazy. He'll admit it. And Chris Rowe will admit it. What that bull could be. Okay, well, why do you two chuckle puppets give a It's his guy's tag. He burned his points. He had a good time. He went out and killed a 330 bull, very respectable bull. That was his deal. But it's driving you crazy because you are a guide in that unit, and it's taking money from your pocket because those bulls could get bigger, which means you can sell some hunter on the size of that bull in that unit. How do you think that looks to a non-hunter? Not very good, fellas. I mean, criticize me for being a hunter all you want, but I guarantee you try to sell that to somebody that's mid-road or a non-hunter. It doesn't sound great. Don't shoot the 330 bull. We need that thing to grow bigger so I can get more money in my pocket. Or I can put it on my wall and make my penis look bigger. It doesn't sound good. It just doesn't. And I'm a killer, right? I like to kill everything. It's horrible. I mean, like, you give me shit like, tone it down, dude. We're doing a podcast. I like shooting shit. There's no way around it. But I like bringing the meat home. It's how big of a deal it is for me. We eat it every night. So as we're going on this giant rant or tirade, and I don't have anything against Jay Scott, but as we're talking, maybe I do after he had Jason Harrison blast us, right? But what I do have an issue with is hunting getting taken away because of the perspective of a non-hunter from the outside looking in. Another thing is I'm bashing you guys, Brendan Burns, which I don't like the guy. I mean, he's done everything he can to blast me in the industry. I'm anemic I don't know what. The guy must like a shiitake, right? It must be little. But when he gets on a podcast where we know a lot of non and antis are listening to, and he talks about shooting Godzilla, I want to shoot the biggest. I listened to that podcast for the only reason because so many people said, you got to listen to this guy talk. At not one point in time did he mention meat that I can remember. He didn't mention I'm going to feed my family. All he talked about was inches. The biggest, which is fine. You always want to shoot the most dominant species or the largest. But at no time did he stop and say, and I love backstrap. He didn't say that.
Right.
That is a bad outlook.
It's a bad image for hunting. And that's, again, people in BC didn't shut down hunting because
of
hunting for food.
Yeah.
They're like, you want to hunt a grizzly for food? Go ahead. That's still legal.
90%.
You want to hunt a grizzly because you just want a trophy? 90% voted to shut it down.
Yeah.
And so and when I talked to Shane, he was like, look, there is a very clear correlation between the word trophy and mass population saying it being against it.
Yeah.
And then the word food and hunting for food and the population being very much in favor of it, or at least in support of it, because they're like, I eat my steak. Yep. Yeah. I eat my burger. I eat my fish. I eat my chicken. It's kind of, if you want to go out and kill your own animal, I guess that's okay.
And you think about it, trying to get this through so I don't sound like I'm a Kuyu hater because of what they said. I'm looking at it. It was on the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm looking at it in the perspective, I do my part, and I'm talking to a non or a hunter or whatever, someone that eats steak but's against hunting.
Yep.
And I explain to them how steak, hey, that came from an animal too, but yours was raised on a farm, and I go out and hunt mine, and we talk about fitness, and you talk about everything, and then that guy Googles hunting. Okay, and then he's like, okay, let me look up Joe Rogan hunts.
Yeah. And
then here comes some little blonde-headed chucklehead talking about inches. Everything that I did to talk that guy into the meat aspect of it.
Yeah, it's undermined. It's like I remember Ranella after the Cecil thing, he was talking about how he's tried to make headway into this non-hunting world, and connect people back to the food and where it comes from. and he's done a great job. ZPZ Productions, the whole crew has done a great job being great ambassadors for hunting. And then he's like, and then it feels like we've made all this progress in mainstream spaces around hunting.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, somebody comes in like Cecil and does something kind of sketchy, the edge of a boundary of the park. They shoot a famous lion. There's just all this stuff. And it's like, and then other things fall out because of it. And it's like, now we all fall backwards.
Yeah.
Everybody's an evil trophy hunter, and it changes the whole focus. So he's like, man, if we're all hunters and we're all supposed to support each other, that's not going to work, because some dudes are in our boat shooting holes in the bottom of it. So what do you do?
Well, and I see it because, like I hang out with mountaineering guys, and and there is a sway, make CrossFit, whatever. Paleo.
CrossFit.
Yeah.
Join the cult.
There is a sway to where, like, CrossFitters specifically, it's kind
paleo.
Of paleo. It's more geared towards meat, in a very rudimentary.
It's really geared toward hunter-gatherer lifestyles.
Exactly.
Just getting back to the way nature has built us.
Recently, I had a bear claw necklace, and I was in a mountaineering store, and a guy said, "Is that a velociraptor?" And me being me, I said, "Are you shitting me?" I'm like, "No, it's not. It's a grizzly bear claw." And he said, "Did you eat it?" And I said, "I did. I couldn't take it all home." I said, "We had actually a big roast that night," and he said, "Are you a trophy hunter?" And I was like, "Man, I'm like the farthest thing from a trophy hunter." And I said, and I asked him, "So what do you define hunting? Like, what do you think hunting is?" He goes, "Well, it just seems like you guys go shoot them and leave the body." And I was like, "Well, that's like the farthest thing from the truth." And I'm a very inquisitive guy. Why? Fuck, TV, man, TV. Yeah. Oh, let's watch them drop. Boom, dead.
Whack them and stack them.
Yeah, which I like seeing hit the ground, but the perception of the outside world. And again, if you I think one of the things that even though I give crap to like Seacat and Foss and those guys, they do a very, very good Stephen Drake.
Beautiful.
Kibblewalk, I can't pronounce his name ever, whatever.
But beautiful cinematography, a beautiful story.
They portray from beginning to end as good as you can do. The guys from Rockhouse Motion.
They're eating the meat. It's all part of the package. Yep.
And that, people dig on that. People, when I say people, non and anti, I can send a guy to one of the a Stephen Drake, Foss, Seacat production, a Rockhouse, a Donnie Vincent, and in good conscience know the kill was secondary.
Right.
The adventure, the story, is Suzanne going to kill you? We may need to cut this short, folks. But again, as I just winged an antelope at a distance I probably shouldn't shot. I'm probably a hypocrite, but I did bring it home. Actually, you're going to take it. My freezer's pretty full, or we'll split it. But
I'm eating it.
The perception, keep in mind at all times, the perception of those around you are important, especially non or anti-hunters.
I can sit down and in the first 5 minutes of a film that I watch, a hunting show, determine whether this show was built for hunters or whether it was built for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think we're way past the day and age where any kind of content or production or film that you're producing, we're way past this is made for hunters.
Yeah.
From here on out, we have a responsibility to make that content for everyone.
Whether you like it or not. I understand the redneck side of, they took our jobs. We're not going to stop and let them. I get it, right? Like, just do what you do. It doesn't matter. It matters. And
Look
this
at
is
BC.
coming from a dipshit. I'm speaking about myself, that 10 years ago was that guy, they took our jobs. Like, screw them. I'm going to do what I want. Where now, there's so much spotlight on us, and it's specifically guys like you or me or Donnie or Rogan or Ranella, great spokesman. And it sounds like Ranella has poached a bit in his day. I'm not sure, but he certainly talks about it.
In his books, he's talked about, hey, I wasn't the most, when he did his trapping and stuff, he used illegal snares and things like that. And it was kind of fascinating to hear, but he's evolved as a person and as a hunter.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Me being the redneck from Detroit Lake, Oregon, I am starting to see what I do reflects much greater, much larger than I even realized. Because when I run into someone at the store that doesn't hunt, knows nothing, but saw me on Instagram, that just popped up on their page and is like, "You're a hunter. I've seen you." It's important that I don't look like, as much as I'd like to post some photos that are a little gruesome to show broadhead entries, I'm smart enough to not do it. Okay.
Right.
I mean, now
I've seen a few of those posts where they've got some arrows sticking out of a deer's face and it says, "Make sure that we're ethical and you practice."
Yeah, don't do that.
I just am like, now that doesn't do us any favors.
No, it doesn't. So I guess as we wrap this up, don't shoot beyond your effective range. Learn how to tune your bow, and don't be a dipshit online.
Wise words by Aron Snyder.
Well, I mean, the whole I need to stop speaking now because I'll have to apologize less later. I got to keep that in my mind all the time, even at work, because sometimes I get riled up. But again, a strong, united front of ethical, humane hunting, bringing home the meat is important.
The fact is, a lot of these things are in the public view no matter what anymore.
Yeah.
So it used to be 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when you made a hunting show, it was on a DVD.
Yeah.
Who actually went out and bought it?
Yeah.
Someone who bought a DVD.
Yeah.
And then that person must have been a hunter, and so they bought it. A non-hunter doesn't do that.
Yeah.
But we live in a new day and age, so now when something's produced, it's public in general for everyone to see.
Yeah.
And so the way that it's just a responsibility to portray the proper motives. And I think Shane Mahoney talked about this. He goes, I think 90% of the hunters have great motives. Or he didn't say 90%, but he said, I think a lot of hunters have great motives. The issue isn't that they don't have good motives. It's that they don't talk about those motives.
You're right.
They talk about inches.
Yeah.
They talk about targets.
Yeah.
An animal as a target instead of talking about the other aspects, because we're all macho, we're all alpha, we're all
manly men.
We don't want to be touchy-feely. And so, but those are the things that the greater public would like to know why we're doing it, not because we are bloodthirsty people.
Even though I am a bit bloodthirsty myself, fully admitted, I will also say that I have swayed, in my opinion, more non or anti-hunters to our side than anybody I know, mostly because of photography and some of the crowds I hang out with. Is it my duty? Kind of. I mean, as a hunter, whether it was 10 years ago, it certainly is now.
Well, and I think it is a responsibility if you care about wildlife and care about the planet we live on. Like, as I talk to Shane Mahoney and you learn about and you see it, animals are disappearing off the planet at an alarming rate, and maybe not so much in North America, although it is here too. Yeah. Game animals, not necessarily, but other animals in the ecosystem, absolutely, songbirds and so forth. But you start talking about animals in Africa, everything's on the brink of extinction. You know?
It hasn't been managed, in my opinion. Poachers for the big part of it, and I watch way too much Netflix on these Nat Geo things, so I'm all tuned in to CSI and Bones, but I mean I'm tuned into rhino poaching. I mean, basically.
I was going to say, but with all these animals on the edge of extinction and so forth, or extirpation, or that are struggling, when people adopt something like the North American model of conservation, we've proven it works.
Yeah.
Better than any other system that's ever been invented. That means that making the resource valuable as a meat commodity and so forth, and having hunted, makes me appreciate and care about wildlife more than when I don't hunt.
Right.
And so I think, based on sharing that message the right way, if you care about animals and the natural world, then you should care about how you're portraying your motives, because it matters to people. Yeah. They care. They care why Aron Snyder wants to hunt a grizzly bear. They want to know why you want to hunt a grizzly bear. They want to know why you want to kill a moose. Yeah. They want to know why. And if those motives aren't good,
I guess you can't say pure, but if they're not catered to a sustainable resource, or
if they're not somewhat aligned with them in a morally ethical way, then they're going to do everything they can to stop what you're doing.
And I'm sure trophy hunters will watch this and make fun of us and give us shit or whatever else, which is fine. But I'm not bashing trophy hunters because it's important to shoot giant crap. I mean, it's awesome to shoot big stuff.
We both get excited when we see a giant buck or a bull elk or any.
It's not like I see a forked horn and I'm coming out my skin. I see a 240-inch, 40-inch wide mule deer.
You're like freaking out. No, we both appreciate big animals and stuff, but
if you just talk about the inches and not the meat, it's a bad. It gives a bad vibe out. So.
Well, I got to get home before my wife
This podcast got me out of going to dinner with my girlfriend's family. I thank you for that.
You're welcome, Aaron. And for you folks out there listening, hope you continue to enjoy the show.
Are you going to post this before we leave? Because I feel I may need to defend myself on this podcast, and I'll be gone while we're in British Columbia.
Nah, it's just posted while we're gone. We leave in 2 days, so it's not like there's a ton of time. But I wanted to ask people, just tell people thank you. Thank you for supporting Aaron and I in the podcast, and we get a lot of emails every week, a lot of messages that thank us, and I just have a lot of gratitude for that. And
it's overwhelming, but it's good. And if I give you 3-word responses, I apologize, but it is overwhelmingly positive. Even though I bet you about haters from time to time. The amount of people, some dude made a wisecrack on my page today, guys just unleashed on him. The positive feedback and knowing that we're helping people is huge for me, or I'd stop doing it because I hate dealing with dickheads. I thank you guys too, or gals and girls, guys and girls.
And it should be fun doing. We got some fun hunts and some fun video plan. Anybody who I'm going to plug this, if you got a chance, go out and leave us a review on iTunes. Good or bad, preferably bad. Aaron always says leave a good one or don't leave one.
I think you should leave a good one personally. I wouldn't leave a bad one. I mean, you can leave a bad one, but make sure it's bad. No, I don't want anybody else call me a dickhead. Make a bad one about Brian. Or I don't know. Yeah.
We kind of have this contest of who gets more hate sometimes.
I know, right? That was the
it's hard
first
to tell.
One. Yeah, that was one. I didn't get to read that one. I don't get too many. It's usually
in general. I don't think either of us get it too bad.
Well, like this one, I will because I'm making fun of Kuyu. So somebody will pop on.
You're not making fun of the quality of the product or anything like that.
No,
you're talking about
anybody that calls Eastman's and says we're going to pull our marketing money if you don't pull Aaron as a writer. I probably am not going to say too many good things about that specific individual. I would like to handle that the old way and we'll just throw down there, BB. Let's see what happens after that. But that's just me, right? I probably was held too much as a child, or maybe not enough.
All right, folks, there you have it. We're going to end this baby now and stay gritty. In 1907, only 41,000 elk remained in North America, and in 1950, only 12,000 pronghorn remained. Today, there are more than 1 million elk and 1.1 million pronghorn. Why? Because hunting is conservation. In 1937, hunters actually requested an 11% tax on guns, ammo, bows, and arrows to help fund conservation. That tax so far raised more than $8 billion for wildlife conservation. Altogether, hunters pay more than $1.6 billion a year for conservation programs. No one gives more. It's obvious that hunters care about animals, and yet we actively hunt and kill them. Many people cannot understand this dichotomy. How can we both care about animals and also kill them? It's a question that I challenge all of you to consider. Here is an excerpt from the Gritty Bowmen film, Alberta, with a quote from Fred Bear that describes my feelings on this subject. The first shot on this buck was fatal, and it cleanly pierced his vitals, but he didn't go down. I hate to see animals suffer, and when possible, I will always shoot them again if I have the opportunity. I have tremendous respect for this buck and his will to survive. He didn't go down easy, and I have mixed emotions about that. At times like this, I am reminded of a quote by Fred Bear, which somewhat describes my thoughts on this matter. Quote, I have always tempered my killing with respect for the game pursued. I see the animal not only as a target, but as a living creature with more freedom than I will ever have. I take that life if I can, with regret as well as joy, and with the sure knowledge that nature's way of fang and claw and starvation are a far crueler fate than I bestow. I do not hunt for the joy of killing, but for the joy of living, and the inexpressible pleasure of mingling my life, however briefly, with that of a wild creature that I respect, admire, and value. We can argue as much as we like, but the fact is, hunting is man's oldest and most successful try at life. Every human being is alive today because our ancestors hunted. So it's a relatively new phenomenon for people to regard hunting as a cruel and frivolous activity that has no worth outside of personal gratification for the hunter. The funny thing is, hunting has increased my appreciation for wild animals and wild places, not decreased it. And as I watch society lose its ties to wildlife and conservation, I feel my bond with nature grow ever stronger in direct correlation to my time spent hunting. I understand now more than ever that hunting is the greatest hope for creating the next generation of true conservationists. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting in the outdoors. Our wild animals and wild places depend on it. As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.